we gather is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. I would ask everybody to put their phones on mute, and hopefully we can take them off mute when we leave. Approval of the agenda. I have a motion moved by Lynn Clegus, seconded by Duncan McGregor, that the rules of procedure order be amended to move number 9 delegations up in the agenda order to follow number 5 mayor's remarks, and for the agenda for the regular council meeting held June 27th, 2023 be approved as presented. Are there any amendments, Kathy?
No, there are not, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so as presented. Philip?
Sorry, were we not adding one item to closed session, or is that already covered?
That's already in there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. All those in favor? Carried. Right. Is there any disclosure pecuniary interest in general nature thereof of any item on tonight's agenda by any member of council? Nothing noted. We'll note that in the minutes. Moved by Lynn Clegus, seconded by Duncan McGregor, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held June 13th, 2023 be approved as presented. Any amendments or questions? Nikki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question, I'd sent it to Kathy last week, was in regards to the garbage pickup at the caboose.
Mm-hmm.
Is all we had done is a motion to accept the information that was presented to us. How would we go about putting a motion on the table about picking up the garbage?
I thought we did make the decision on the garbage.
Yeah, I thought we did. We made the decision not to pick up the garbage.
I thought we just discussed it and there was no motion. The motion was to accept it for information.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't read the minutes.
Yeah, and I think that was sort of discussed sort of after, but there was no motion put forth not to accept it, the garbage, because I know that Councillor, and Bill was mentioning that he could certainly do it for them on the side. And I remember the mayor mentioning that it's not our property. So therefore for us to pick it up, but that's why at that point, but if it wants to come forth, then would have to come forth another request to come forth and discuss that for sure separately. Okay.
You want to pick it up?
Well, they do bring a lot of tourism into the area and it is our property. And that was what was explained to me after the meeting, was that for them to pay to pick up the garbage is a bit of a strain because they fundraise for their money. They do apply for grants to make changes there. And that was information that I don't think we all received that at the time.
Well, we can bring it back. If 2/3 of the majority want to bring it back to consider, we can do that. Okay. So we'll put that on at the end under new business.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of the motion for the minutes? Carried. All right, mayor's remarks. I have a motion to read, moved by Lynn and seconded by Duncan. Whereas the Township of Central Frontenac recognizes the importance of agriculture in the region, and whereas the Township of Central Frontenac believes a strong agricultural economy is essential for enduring communities, for the health of our residents, and to establish a strong community in support of food security for our citizens, as well as our businesses and organizations. And whereas the Township of Central Frontenac has a vision of a strong agricultural community that is rooted in the character of Frontenac and its residents, welcoming, natural, healthy, clean, tranquil, entrepreneurial, and ruled by choice and conviction. And whereas the Township of Central Frontenac is committed to supporting agriculture to grow businesses, attract more visitors, and expand the tax base. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Central Frontenac hereby declares September 1 to October 15th, 2023 as Open Farm Days in Frontenac County, and reminds individuals of the importance of this 6-week celebration, which supports local agriculture and food businesses in our communities. And further, that the township encourages all residents to support local farms and food businesses by participating in this series of events. All those in favor? Carried. It's certainly huge in the South. that have a lot of big active farms, but we do have some hobby farms that might welcome visitors as well. Certainly you can buy eggs in a number of places, and that's a good thing to be doing. Okay, mayor's remarks. Canada Day is coming up, July 1st. We're having a parade. We're having stuff at the beaches. Arden's having stuff as well. All the districts are, no, I shouldn't say all the districts. I know District 2 and 3 are going to be putting floats in. I don't know about Kennebec or Hinchinbrook. Anyway, those who will be on the float, we have to meet across from the office at around 11:15 on Canada Day, and then go from there. The firemen are doing a pancake breakfast, and if you haven't been, it's excellent. And good Convoy maple syrup. That's the best part of pancakes, is the syrup. Anything else that I'm missing? July, we will have one meeting, and August, we will have one meeting. So the agendas will be even heavier than our 37 motions today. So we better have some supper before we come. All right, that's all for me. Deputy Mayor Smith.
Hey, nothing at this time.
Okay. All right, we will move on then. And we are bringing up our number 9, Charbot Lake Business Group.
No,
No,
Gary Scanlon.
Gary Scanlon. So Gary is with us by Zoom.
Gary is right there.
Hello, Gary.
Good evening. Pleasure to be with you.
Welcome.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we will turn it over to you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. I've put together a presentation that I think the clerk can bring to the forefront. Very good. And thank you. So I was asked to provide you with an overview of development charges, and to give you some of the insights into the mechanics and what municipalities have to go through, as part of this process. So right now in Ontario, there's, of the 400 and some odd municipalities, there is approximately 50% of those municipalities that have development charge bylaws. We do have up in the north, there's about 176 municipalities. So they're not necessarily the hotbed of economic growth. So many of those municipalities, I think there's only 8 across the northern realm that actually have bylaws. So in the south, there's a good amount of municipalities who have chosen to adopt these form of bylaws, which helps them finance infrastructure to accommodate growth. So if I go to the next slide, please. As I go through, if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them as I'm proceeding. However, if you wish to wait until the end, more than happy to answer the questions at the end. So development charges, the purpose is to recover infrastructure costs. So capital costs associated with residential and non-residential growth within a municipality. So it's when we go through this process, we do calculate for both the residential sector and non-residential. There are municipalities who may choose to only charge for residential growth, but not the industrial or commercial or institutional. So that's something just to clarify. The second bullet just talks about the Development Charges Act actually breaks costs or infrastructure costs into 2 different categories. The first one is more localized cost, and they call it local servicing under the Act. And basically, it says that very localized costs are the responsibility of the developing landowner. So if you have a subdivision, maybe within that subdivision, you might have roads, perhaps streetlights, maybe sidewalks. More of the urbanized municipalities or areas, they would have water and sewer, et cetera. So those costs internal to the subdivision basically are the full responsibility of the developer. So that is their cost. The development charges pick up those broader costs that are normally outside of the subdivision. So parks, development, recreation, recreational services, fire, police, libraries. If you have municipal water and wastewater, it picks up that infrastructure. So the broader costs. So those are that's the area that we focus in on when undertaking the calculations. So as part of the process, though, we do define developer responsibilities clearly in the report, and then what we're picking up in the development charge. Next slide. Just to highlight, development charges have been around for about 65 years. They came in the mid-50s, 1950s, and they were originally under the Planning Act. And if you've ever heard the term lot levies, that's development charges. It's just at that particular point, they were imposed under the Planning Act, and they could be imposed when you created a lot. So either by subdivision or by severance, when those new lots were created, you could impose the charge. And that's how they got the nickname lot levies. From the mid-50s to basically the end of the 1980s, we were under that regime. And there was if somebody wanted to appeal the bylaws, they would go to the OMB. And so there was a lot of case law that really over those 30 years defined many of the calculations, the approaches, and how we would undertake a development charge study. So in 1989, the province weaved together all of that legislation, and they came out with the first Development Charges Act in 1989. And you can see as we move through time, there was an update, there was a change in 1997. And then basically for the next almost 20 years, there was no changes to the legislation. But since 2015 or January 1st, 2016, you can see we've had 6 modifications to the legislation, which are initially undertaken by the Liberal government in 2015-16, and subsequent the Conservative government since 2019. So there's been considerable change. Some of those I'll kind of highlight as I go through, but they're more to advise municipalities who are currently going through the process what the changes are when they're looking to update their bylaws. So as you can see, these have been around for a long time. The one thing that I didn't present in here is, in addition to this the legislation and the corresponding changes, there is 175 roughly case law, so OMB, LPAT, OLT decisions that basically give insights into how we do the calculations or some interpretations of the legislation. But that's for, the guys like me to read. You don't have to read it, but we have to be mindful of all of those changes in order to properly advise our clients on how to do the appropriate charges and bylaws. Next slide, please. So if we, at a very high level, as I say, these are a lot of details behind these, but I'll hit some of the highlights from the legislation. So in order to have a charge, you must prepare a background study, and I'll go through some of the calculation or some of the things we have to do therein. And once we have the study, you must make it available to the public for a minimum 60 days. So there's a circulation period for people to be able to read it, develop the questions, whatever, engage with the municipality. And there's a requirement for a mandatory public meeting. So that public meeting must be undertaken before you consider the bylaw. So it's a process where you can receive input from the general public, and that input would assist you in making decisions with respect to the bylaw. What's contained in the background study is a number of different things. And if we go to the next slide, please, you'll see that the legislation sets out several steps. And it starts by saying identifying the amount, type, and location of growth. So the amount would be, how much in different areas, if you have an urban area versus the outside the urban area, how much and the where. The type would be residential versus commercial industrial institution. And then obviously the location helps us to focus in on those areas in order to see what servicing is needed. From that growth, then we identify the servicing needs, and the needs translate into actual capital projects and infrastructure costs, so what the cost estimates are. We must make some deductions. So are we going to receive any grant subsidies and other contributions, which would then be deducted? There's not a lot of grants these days, but in the past we've had them. We need to consider whether there's a benefit to existing development. Basically, what's that saying is, for example, if we're replacing a fire station, you've got a 4,000 square foot station, we're going to build a 10,000 square foot. Part of that's replacing something that's already in place. And then we would provide in the costing for the expansion cost, but not the replacement. As well, if we're overcoming some type of inherent problem in an area, maybe if you've got water servicing and you have low water pressure, some of the improvements we might make would resolve that water pressure issue. So that would be something we would consider as well as benefit to existing. For the softer services, so the non-water, wastewater roads type of services, there's a calculation that we have to do. Basically, we look backwards 15 years, we look at quality and quantity measures, and really it's a mathematical calculations that using that backward looking calculation and then looking into the future, it sets an upper limit on what we can charge within those individual services. It doesn't apply to water, wastewater, and storm because they're environmentally related. So whatever you need to put into place in order to allow that development. So how much, your water supply, that could come from groundwater, could come from streams, could come from, a lake, could be purchased from another neighbor. So the province does not focus in this service standard calculation on, as I say, those more water, wastewater, and storm related services. And then if you have a bylaw moving from one to the next, we have to consider whether you've got any balances in the reserve fund, and we'd have to rationalize it. So then we start with projects. We consider some deductions. We're left with a net cost. That cost must be split between a residential and non-residential benefit. There's many different ways that we measure that. And then once we've done that, we divide it by the growth. And that's how we come up with the calculations of a charge for on the residential side, depending on the type of home, and then the non-residential side. And that's normally measured by square footage of buildings. So if we go to the next slide, in very, very simple terms, what's the cost that we can attribute to growth? And then we divide that in by the growth and we come up with the charges. So for residential, normally we have low density, so singles and semi-detached, medium densities, which would be townhouses, and then high density, which is apartments. So we'll come up with charges to kind of reflect the size of the units and basically where we drill down more to what's the average number of people in those units, and that helps us to vary the charge based on the size of the residential unit. Non-residential is expressed on a cost per square foot. So if my development charge is $1 per square foot for non-residential, if a commercial building is 5,000 square feet, you multiply it by the dollar. The amount that they'll pay is $5,000 to the municipality. Next slide, please. As we move through, what the councils are always challenged with is, should I have a development charge or not, such as yourselves? And there's no mandatory requirement to have a development charge. But what happens is ultimately over time, with development pressures and, perhaps we're getting growth now. It may warrant improvements to roads that are adjacent to the subdivision. We may have to put in water treatment facilities and then extend servicing to those developments, et cetera. So as you experience growth, there's pressures to invest in infrastructure. And the two bottom ovals basically identified that on the one hand side, you can recover potentially as much as you can from a development charge from those developments. Or if you choose not to have development charges, then what happens is the existing taxpayer, the existing water and wastewater ratepayer end up basically subsidizing new growth because they will pay the full cost of that infrastructure. So you recover what you can, so they're paying their fair share, development's paying the fair share of the infrastructure. If there's nothing, then the existing residents end up subsidizing new growth. Next slide. So just on when I talked about growth, actually the act does not talk to growth, it talks to development. So there's been some municipalities we've worked with. I remember years ago, Renfrew, the town of Renfrew, their growth forecast basically said, well, we're not going to grow anymore by people. But what we were seeing is they were building about 50 units a year, but the population wasn't changing. And that's because when you get into some of the detailed demographics, what happens is over time, new homes tend to have a higher occupancy, but they tend to decline over time. So an example, I built my house 25 years ago. I have 3 kids, so there's 5 people in my household. The kids are no longer here. I've been fortunate to, get them to leave the nest. So now there's only my wife and I. So now we're down to 2 people. So that's a factor in, we're not getting any growth in population, but we are having about 50 units per year. So, in Renfrew's case, we were looking at the fact that over 10 years, they'd be building 500 units, but the population wouldn't change. You can still impose the charge. The Act talks about development. It actually doesn't talk about resident population or employment growth. So just to clarify that. We have different planning horizons. You have complete flexibility. Maybe we take 10 years or 20 years as our planning horizon. Maybe we use the official plan targets. When we're dealing with water and wastewater, quite often they are to service a certain capacity. So we might use that, or there may be other forecasts. So we have a lot of flexibility in generating those forecasts that we would use. Sometimes as well, we can charge municipal wide, or we may be allowed, depending, to charge on an area specific basis. So these are some of the considerations as we're going through the study that we would engage with staff and then subsequently with council to talk about the approach and how we would impose the charge municipal wide or just specifically on certain distinct areas. Next slide. Over time, the number of services have been narrowed on which we can collect. So originally, let's say back in 1989, we could collect for any service you wish to that you provide and you wish to recover for. As you can see now, they've narrowed the number of services. I think they've captured the more essential services, but over time they've continued to reduce the number of services. What I presented here, you can see number 17, there's a line through it. Bill 23, which was put into place at the end of last year, further reduced services. So there are municipalities that provide municipal housing. That's been eliminated now from the eligible listing. Next slide, please. There's just a definition of capital costs. Basically, for the most part, any costs that you incur as part of a capital project can be included. Right now, we can include land, or, and I'll come back to why it's highlighted. We can include land, or once we have the land, we can improve it. So obviously, if you got a fire station, maybe you need to put make sure that they have water at the station and sewage, electrical. You can put parking lot, you can do the landscaping. So all of that's improvements to the land. You can acquire, you can buy an existing building, you can lease a building and pay the development charges through a portion of that lease through development charges. You can construct your own, or you can, in certain cases, improve buildings where we can demonstrate that that improvement is expanding the capacity to provide the service. For example, you've got a basement in the library, it's dead storage. Maybe you'd like to renovate that and turn it into programming space. So because you're expanding, you know, the areas which to provide the service, we could include it. Equipment and rolling stock, I've talked about leases, circulation materials for libraries. If you need to borrow money, the interest can also be included in the calculation. So basically, it's all of those costs can be included. Why I've highlighted the land is because with Bill 23, the province said there may be certain services where we might want to not allow you to recover the cost for land. There's no indication from the province what service they might do it for, but at least they've indicated that maybe we can't. Right now, the only one, and this has been in place for many, many, many years, we can't buy park land because you can do that under the Planning Act. But once you have the land, we can develop the parks with development charges. So right now, there is one service that we can't provide for, and that's parkland. We can't buy the land. Next slide. And then we talked a little bit about that localized service. And actually in 2016, as of 2016, the province kind of strengthened the local service policy. And what they wanted to do was to make sure that it was very clear that the developers are going to be, your policy will tell them what their responsibilities are and what we include in the DC. And it basically expressly says, and you cannot overcharge them, you can't require them to over contribute or to construct works that you haven't rationalized through the development charge study. So those are, they strengthened, it would appear, perhaps some municipalities may have been, I won't use the term abusing the system, but maybe not working quite in the favor of the developers. So there's been complaints. So now they've strengthened that. So as I noted, we've got these this local service policy, which is probably a good thing to be communication, very clear on what their responsibilities are. And if we go on to the next slide, I'll just show you some examples of what we normally include. So we would take a look at, you know, what roads are going to be built by the developers. So obviously internal roads, whether they be, you know, whether they be asphalt, more urban standard, or whether they be rural standard, they would be their responsibility. There are some things with, you know, what if you have a collector road running through the middle of a subdivision? How do we deal with that? So we develop policies to deal with the roads, intersection improvements, and potentially traffic signals, street lights, sidewalks, these trails and bike routes, noise walls like abatement measures, land dedication easements, water, wastewater, and storm, and park dedication requirements. So these are the normal things we'll turn our mind to and include it in the local service policy. Next slide. And this basically, just from a very quick representation, I always describe that the infrastructure is kind of a hierarchy. And you can see, for example, let's say water, you have small internal mains, you may have larger mains, you may have some localized pumping. So that all localized stuff would be the developer responsibility. But the broader costs that are outside of the subdivision may be the very large trunks. There's the large pumping and distribution, there's storage, there's water treatment, and then there's the water supply. So that higher, the higher level infrastructure we include in the DC, and that's represented in the blue. And then for the more buff colored, that's the developer's responsibility. And we've given you water, wastewater, storm, and roads as an example of that. Next slide. And so when we develop the development charge, there are mandatory exemptions, and then there's discretionary exemptions. So the mandatory ones are, the province has said, you cannot collect for these different instances. So you can't impose your charge on, let's say, the county, and you can't charge it on the school boards. If you have an existing industrial building, you can allow them to expand by up to 50%, and that first 50%, they don't pay a charge. There is more intensification within let's say, a single family home. So you can add 2 additional apartments inside an existing single family or semi-detached or row house. As well, you can build a 3rd unit on your property. So you can have 2 and up to 3 ultimate units on your property, and you don't have to pay for the 2nd and 3rd. So those are more recent exemptions they put into play. They've got higher density development exemptions, including if you've got rental residential buildings, there's a reduction for them as well. And I highlighted affordable, attainable, and nonprofit. Those are new, but we've not got a definition of what they mean yet. And then we've got, as I've noted, residential units get discounted. Below, on top of all that, council may want to further develop some policies. You want to maybe reduce the charge or not impose it at all in certain instances. Some municipalities may say, well, I'll charge commercial, but I want to give industrial an exemption, just as an example, or give them a reduced charge. Maybe, and this might be the instance, as you're putting in a new charge, you may consider phasing in over time. That's eligible. And then part of our policies recognize that if I knock down a building and then you replace it, that there should be some type of credit or some type of recognition. So if I knock down a single family home and I replace it with a single family home, there shouldn't be a charge. So we develop policies in conjunction with yourself and on these different instances. If we go to the next slide, it's kind of the top 10 exemptions, that discretionary exemptions we see. So quite often places of worship are exempted, bona fide farm buildings. So we may charge for the house, but no, a lot of municipalities don't charge for bona fide farm buildings. Industrial development, downtown or infill development, brownfield redevelopments, hospitals, university colleges, and nonprofit or affordable housing. Now, they were common discretionary, that nonprofit and in some cases affordable housing seem to be moving now into a mandatory. Next slide, please. So just, I'm reaching the end. I thought I might give you some sample. I've just done, a broader reach. I've taken a look at some different jurisdictions. You can see United Counties, Prescott and Russell, Lanark, Lennox and Addington, Hastings, Renfrew, etc., just to give you a perspective of the range of charges that kind of are in there. You can see that Clarence Rockland, and this would include the upper tier and lower tier charges. So in total, in Clarence Rockland, there's just below $30,000 for a single detached unit. Russell, similarly, are in the $26,000 range. Mississippi Mills, 24,000. So you can see those municipalities in and around the Ottawa area are have higher charges. Greater Napanee, so just basically down the road, they're around 16,000. Quint West 14, Renfrew just under 12, and then South Frontenac, so your neighbor, is at 10.6, and Center Hastings, etc. So you can see quite a wide range. Some of these include water and wastewater, which tend to really increase the charge, and then some are basically potentially all of the services, your parks, recreation, library, roads, fire, those type of things. So that just gives you, once again, general perspective on types of charges out there. Next slide.
Upside down questions.
Yes.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, we'll open it up to council. Questions or comments?
Oops. I guess I did a boo-boo there. Sorry about that.
That's okay. It keeps us awake. This is certainly something we have thrown around over the years. It would be a matter of hiring a consultant to actually go out and bring all of those things into play to see what kind of a number we might be looking at. But certainly the phrase that's used is development should pay for development. And this is why development charges are happening so much in so many communities. So at this point, if there aren't any questions or comments, thank you very much. It's a very interesting topic with all sorts of things to be considered, and something that this council will certainly be looking at over the next couple of years, if not this year. Money is tight, so we need to look at ways that we can bring in some revenue to help with some of the pressures that we're having. So thank you very much, Gary, and I have a motion. And the motion is moved by Duncan and seconded by Lynn, that council received the presentation regarding development charges from Gary Scanlon from Watson Associates for information. And thank you very much for coming tonight. All
Thank
those
you.
in
It's been
favor?
my pleasure. Nope.
All those in favor? Carried.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm losing my voice here. Not a good thing to happen. All right. Now we have one more delegation. Victor, are you ready to go ahead? Okay. So we have with us Victor and I believe Greg Butler. Okay, welcome. And this is to deal with the Cardinal Cafe parking, I believe.
So thank you, Madam Mayor, Council, for allowing us to speak. I think everybody here knows me, so I'm not going to introduce myself. But I think you also realize that I'm not Allison Robinson. Allison couldn't make it today, and so she asked me to just fill in for her. So I want to start by just giving a very, very brief account of the Charlotte Lake Business Group. This is a group of about 8 or 9 business owners in the area who sit on a board of directors and the purpose of this board is to support existing businesses and to encourage new businesses to flourish here in Central Frontenac. So the reason we're here this evening is we heard that there's going to be some parking restrictions in front of the Cardinal Cafe, and we are concerned that this is going to be a problem, an issue for that business. So now I'm going to turn it over to Greg Butler. Greg and his wife, Christine, are the owners of Cardinal Cafe, and I will let him speak to the issue.
Thanks for letting me speak. I know most of you and I've served most of you coffee and it's been a pleasure. So yeah, me and my wife came here last May and took ownership of the cafe and bought a house in the village, and we're absolutely loving the sense of community here and all the support, and we're really grateful that we're able to have a voice and speak about this matter. I know that the parking in front of the cafe has always been a no parking zone. And it's recent that it's going to be enforced. And our only concern, which we agree that it is a matter that should be addressed, and there's a few spots in the village, like on Robert Street, that have a similar situation. So working with Tyson today, we went out and looked at it and mapped out some spots, and we both were in agreement that blocking off the 2 spots beside the corner would be the best for allowing visibility to be made safely on that turn, and opening up the other spots closer to my entrance to allow parking there. That way it keeps everyone safe on the roads, and it still allows my patrons who are passing through to stop when I have such a limited parking space as it is.
Two of you, I'm sure that we're going to be content with what happens as long as it's safe. So Tyson, do you want to come and talk to us as well? I shouldn't be speaking for everyone, but I think that's what we all want, is safety.
Madam Mayor, I met with Greg and Allison this afternoon or this morning. And as mentioned before in my report, that I think it's very reasonable to try to leave as much spaces there as possible. What we've done is laid out 6-meter parking spaces. That's about the length of a 3/4-ton truck. And we were able to paint it out and leave 2. And we feel it's 2 spaces still leaves enough room from the front of that south space to the corner, that there's lots of visibility, and the barricades wouldn't interfere with big trucks kind of trying to turn into the village to get down to the grocery store. We also chose flexible bollard because it is not a permanent solution. It still is a trial, so I'm very comfortable trying this. And I realize the revenue generated from vehicles being able to swing in, park quick, get a coffee and keep going. I've been there in front of the store and watched cars come in, slow down, look for a space, and then drive on because they couldn't find a space. And that's not what we want. We want people slowing down and stopping in their village. So I'm all for this trial, and I think that's what we should look at as a trial-based project. And I'd be totally comfortable applying this to other areas in the village as well.
Council. Philip,
Not really a question, just a comment that, yeah, I don't think it was council's intent.
right into the mic though.
I don't think it was council's intent to impede your business in any way. It was about the safety of the intersection. And I think the resolution and the amendment that we added to it might speak to that. So.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I can read the motion and we can discuss it further.
Madam Mayor, similar to other kind of booming villages that encourage tourism and cycling and walkability, Greg and I also took a look this morning at the possibility of utilizing that space if there was room, and council thought it was safe enough. Obviously, the business group would come back with proposals, but other communities have used spaces like that to put a bike rack, even a picnic table, areas of seating for like restaurants and stuff if you get into bigger cities. Unfortunately, that's going to have to come with some traffic calming measures in our village because it is a to B. The design of that highway was getting vehicles from A to B, but I think traffic calming is really needed through the village of Charbel Lake on 38. But I just wanted to kind of put the bug in council's ear that was also discussed as well. And I think it should be looked at in the future.
We're going to do traffic calming. We need to start south of the village where there's been so many problems with speed. And it will start with a public meeting or a few public meetings before we do anything. We're not going to go down that path again where we go ahead and do something and then have tons of people liking and not liking. So certainly down the road, we can look at that. But for tonight, we're going to solve the parking. Moved by Philip and seconded by Nikki. The council received a letter from the Charbel Lake Business Group regarding parking on Road 38 for information. And further, that staff staff reevaluate to see how many parking spaces can remain along 38. And further, that staff create a parking bylaw for council review. So the agreement you've come to is fine with us. Let's do it as a trial basis, see how it works. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Motion's carried unanimously. Always good when it can be worked out. Thank you for coming, Greg. Thank you, Victor. Good to see you. All right, now we're moving back to staff reports. And we've got Michael up first. All right, our first motion is moved by Duncan and seconded by Lynn, that council receive the check distribution reports totaling $464,927.66 as prepared by the treasurer for information. Any discussion? All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Nikki, go ahead.
Just a quick question. I've noticed in the payables report, and it wasn't really a question for Michael. So that's why I didn't direct it. I've never seen in the past where we've been purchasing boots for students. Is that something new this year that we're going to be purchasing boots because with 10, 15 students, it might be a lot. So just a question, is that our new policy? Are we proceeding with purchasing boots for all the students?
The particular purchase in question was for fire, but we want to make sure the students are safe as well.
My follow-up would be, all students should be treated the same again. So if you're purchasing for one type of student, you would purchase for all types of students, because Public Works would need to be just as safe as fire would be.
Safety boots, not just a regular boot, right? Depending on the job they're doing. Okay. And so often they have their own safety work boots. Comments? Okay. Go ahead, Duncan.
The line item for Ministry of Finance policing. Is that for 1 month or 1 quarter, or what's the time window that bill's for?
Through your Madam Mayor to Councillor McGregor, I had to think of the last name for a second. That is for 1 month. Yes. Yes. Yes, it is.
Did I see your hand up?
Well, I was just, did we decide then, are we buying boots for the students or are we? It sort of was a vague answer there, that's all.
In the roads department, that's the only other place that needs safety boots. Are you intending to buy them for the staff that don't have them?
Madam Mayor, if you would like us to next year budget for that item, then we can, but I just don't want to that'll add up to quite a few dollars and I don't want to go outside our budget.
Question, did fire budget for this? Philip?
I was just going to ask, are these summer students not covered by a grant? And could their equipment not be covered as part of that grant?
I think it's only wages for the grant, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I heard what Cindy said. It's tricky to budget for that because you don't know if you got the grant until like well after the budget season. So I assume we budget according to not getting the grant.
We do for everything. Yes. So we just.
Okay, so maybe fire and public works should be talking to each other and see what's going on. Did we buy 1 pair of boots or 5 pair of boots?
1 in this package, but we have 2 fire students.
Speak to Chris and see what his policy is. And between the 2 of you, come up with what you're going to be doing, but treating them the same. Office, they don't need.
No, under our employee policy for permanent employees, boots we do pay for those. But anything, there's nothing specific in that for students. And I think that's where when students are coming, that is one of the one of the provisos that we ask them, if you have your own safety boots, to bring them. We've never bought any safety boots first, so that's why I'm surprised about that as well.
And Chris may
For sure.
not know that as well, because I don't think he had students last year. Pardon? I don't know.
He's going to be when this comes up for his report for sure.
All right, so pay the bills. All those in favor of the motion? Carried. So discussion will be had between the two departments. All right. Somebody needs to turn the air conditioner off. It's freezing in here. What a waste of money. It's cold. This is ridiculous. All right, moved by Lynn and seconded by Susan, that council approve the following apportionment of assessment as recommended by impact for 2022 and 2023 as applicable for the following roll numbers. And there's 2, 4, 6 of them in our package. Any questions or comments on any of those? All those in favor? Here. Thank you, Cindy. I'd be turning the heat on. Oh, Dan, I need a second signature on that one. We are now at. Yes. Okay. Motion moved by Susan and seconded by Dan that council for the Township of Central Frontenac approve the following reduction of assessment pursuant to the Municipal Act. Rule number 1039-040-20-103-00 Mosier Brian Daniel for the period of January 1, 2021 to December 31st, 2023, as reported by impact. Reason raised by fire, demolition, or otherwise, 357 1DI. And further, that council approve an adjustment of taxes to be calculated by the tax department for the related period. Discussion. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Lynn and seconded by Susan that the report regarding draft asset retirement obligations policy dated June 27th, 2023 be received for information. And further, that council consider a bylaw to adopt the draft asset retirement obligations policy later in the meeting.
Just to clarify, I did intend to do this as a draft report initially, so I apologize to council. I didn't catch that word. I am hoping that it would be approved tonight. If council had any issues or questions, I just take it back and bring it back to council. So that's my intention for tonight. This will require extensive staff resources to address every single one of our assets to determine if they have an asset retirement obligation or not. The easiest ones to think of, as the under mentioned, was asbestos, our landfills, any other legal obligations for underground tanks. This is not a light exercise and should have been done last year. So it will be a cram in to hopefully get our financial statements in an approval status for 2023.
Do you want to leave the word draft on here? Okay, if the mover and seconder is okay with that, I will strike out draft. So now it says regarding the asset retirement obligation policy in both places. Okay, all those in favor? Carried.
Thank you very much. And just one further comment while you're signing that is that this is another example of how municipalities work great together in terms of sharing policies and helping each other out. So just a compliment to MFOA and all the other treasurers out there.
Yeah, it's why reinvent the wheel, right? And you can work together and do it that way. Thank you, Michael. Any questions for Michael before he leaves? None. Thanks. All right. Now we have Chris with us by Zoom. And I have a motion. Is he there? I can't see. Unless that screen is about 20 feet closer. There he is. Hello, Chris.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Okay, we have a motion moved by Lynn and seconded by Susan that council receive for information the CFFR report dated June 27th, 2023. Any questions for Chris? Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had not so much about the report, but I had a couple of questions because we haven't seen Chris in a while.
Right into the mic, Philip. Your voice is.
I can't get much closer. I just wanted to know why we decided not to send any firefighters to the forest fire that happened when there was a call for volunteers, for firefighters to go. That's one of the questions. And then I've noticed we've put our fire ban on, took it off, put it back on, and the province had actually had a fire ban on. So just wondering what liability we have if we're not in conjunction with what the province is suggesting. And I'd asked Chris about the emergency services alert. And if that could be used in the case of a forest fire in our municipality to notify residents. Because there's not really a good method of communicating to the residents if there is an active forest fire streaming across the municipality.
Go
Sorry,
ahead,
a lot of
Chris.
questions there.
Yeah. To start off, the fire ban is, as far as that goes, you're correct. I had looked at the ban because I felt that with the zones that we only had a portion of our municipality in the fire zones with the restrictions with the province. However, through a workshop session last Thursday, which they're going to continue doing for the, I guess, until the fires settle down, they told me that the ban would have to stay on for the whole municipality because we do have a portion in the restricted zone. So I did talk to the media today as well about that, and I sent them the updates from the province on that. So that will be in the local paper, as well as obviously our website's got, and our Facebook page has it on there too. So we have done that. Sorry, Counselor, I'm not feeling 100%, so I apologize why I'm not there tonight. So.
Okay, why we didn't send people to.
Oh, firefighters. Yeah. So South Frontenac sent some people, and North Frontenac sent quite a few firefighters as well. So I felt it was my responsibility to keep our people back in case something happened here. Our numbers are down during the day as it is, but because, as you see tonight, we have an automatic aid agreement that we're going to be joining in with North Frontenac, that I felt that it was best that we keep our people back here to look after our municipality and for the surrounding areas, surrounding municipalities. So that was the reason I did that.
And what was the third one, Philip?
Right.
Emergency alert system.
Right.
For residents.
So no matter what system, I have had experience with this, no matter what system you have, you're usually going to be doing it electronically with a with the cell phone, same as they do the Amber Alerts. There is no way to directly contact somebody unless you have a cell phone to load the app on. There are several programs out there, but they cost money to the municipality. For the last one I did was about $25,000 to set it up. So it is an expense. The people that I've talked to that brought this to my attention were not prepared to do that, to get an app. So this is the only way that we can communicate if there was something that was an emergency, that would be the only way we could get it out to.
Chris, would we also be able to call the Kingston radio stations and the TV and get alerts on there? Because everybody seems to be attuned to those stations.
For sure. I mean, yes, that is something that we would probably do in joint with the rest of the municipalities, surrounding municipalities, and the province, the MNR. We've been working closely with them. I've been in contact with them every week. And as a matter of fact, they've got a crew of 4 rangers coming to our pancake breakfast on Saturday to do some public education with the people attending that as well. So.
And I think you mentioned this, that every Thursday, I believe that from 12 to 1, there is a wildfire group that give us an update. I know I keep getting the invites to sit in on those.
That's correct, Madam Mayor. They started this last Thursday. They felt there was a need for it, sort of like a town hall meeting with all the municipalities in the zone, restricted zone area on the call. There was about just over 200, and they explained the whole process. And what it is not so much as the fires are being reduced, but the resources. They don't have the resources to deploy into our areas, into the south and to the east. So they've asked that we stay on the ban with the province, with the restricted zones.
Right. Philip?
Sorry, I just want some clarity on the emergency alert. So did you say that if we had forest fire in Central Frontenac, M&R would use the emergency alert system to notify people?
No, they don't have anything of that nature as well. They would only use, as they've been doing, the PSAs with the local radio stations in Kingston, and that's actually, I got some feedback on that last week when I put the band back on. But that's the public service announcements is the only way that they're getting it out there.
I get lots about tornadoes and thunderstorms.
Yeah.
Again, you're getting notified through your phone or when you download the apps off the Weather Channel or the Weather Network.
And again, neighbor to neighbor, picking up the telephone and calling your neighbor if somebody does know about it. And maybe when our alerts go out, that's exactly what we can say as well, is call your neighbor and ensure that they know about this.
Right.
Because not everybody has cell phones.
Oh, and I mean, the Derico is a good example of that, right?
Yes.
That was a good example. You had to watch your phone to see where that weather was when it was coming in.
Yeah.
My cousins got caught because they didn't have their phones because they were in the water putting docks in.
Yeah,
So
true. Lynn, did you have your hand up with a question? Mike, put your mic on.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Sorry, on his initial report, he talked, Chris talked about the renovations in the Arden Hall were completed.
So through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Clegg, so we thought we're close with completing everything inside. We have some damage on the exterior of the building on the west side that was caused by the windstorm last year. As it turns out, when we took the siding off, we've got some significant water damage, and we have some reptiles that are getting into the area, into the walls. So we're dealing with that right now. But the inside is they're occupying the training room and the kitchen area now, so they're quite pleased with that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, my question is from your totals by type on the training. Sharpert Lake was significantly up compared to everybody else. Could you explain how they had 12 where the average was 5 to 6, please and thank you.
I'd have to look at that. Probably because more people were showing up for the training programs. That would be the biggest one for that. And their numbers are a lot higher there than they are in the other stations.
Actually, it says number of sessions. Sessions, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So it says Arden for May training was 5, Mountain Grove had 5 trainings and 1 meeting. Sharpert Lake had 1 meeting and 12 trainings. Parham had 1 meeting, 6 trainings and 1 other. So that was, my question was around the number of trainings, 12 in Sharpert Lake, whereas 5 or 6 for the other three halls.
So I can answer that question for you. It just came to mind that one of our Brian Conboy actually held some special training sessions for all of the firefighters in Central for medical training, additional medical training, and they were held at the Sharpert Lake Station.
That's great. Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
Yes, Duncan.
Looking into the response times for medical calls, the medical call response times are very close, if not over the 15-minute mark, which is the time we negotiated with Frontenac Paramedic Service as far as our response goes. Because the call times are getting higher in your reports, would it be worthwhile renegotiating our contract with the county to reduce the number of calls we go to if we're not being effective based on our response time?
You've been a mayor to Councillor Duncan, absolutely. That's been brought up a number of times with county. We're trying to get it to a 30-minute agreement. I have not had any response back from the county on that. But we, myself and I believe South is also looking at the same to try and get it put to the 30-minute response delayed time. So,
just speaking as a county councillor, we did have a report last meeting on paramedic services, and their response times are definitely not what they should be, and they're aware of that. it's the nature of the beast right now, in that so many of the paramedics and the ambulance are being caught at the hospital. Ambulances have to come from further distances to do that call. And it's just a vicious circle. It's our healthcare system in crisis, and ambulance and first responders are just a part of that rolling problem. And nobody really sees a fix unless the hospitals and doctors can get fixed. Then the rest will see the improvement. But up until then, ambulances can sit 6 hours at KGH. So Parham is at KGH. So Snow Road covers, Lanark covers. It's just a vicious circle. So if you can negotiate 30 minutes, great. I doubt that will happen though.
The system is broken. There's cars coming from from different areas, and then you've got cars leaving the county and going to Ottawa, and then they're running calls in Ottawa. So it's not a good.
It's crazy right now. Okay, any other questions on the
Just-
activity report? Go ahead, Chris.
Just one apology for the boots. I wasn't aware that we weren't supplying boots to the students, but they will be out in the field, and I felt it was necessary that they had them and they didn't have a pair. So my apology. I thought it was part of an issue. So I'll know better for next year.
You just have to help Tyson with his budget then to buy some boots for the public works.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on the activity report? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, next we have moved by Lynn and seconded by Susan. Whereas Section 2(6) of the Fire Protection and Prevention Act, Chapter 4, Statutes of Ontario 1997, authorizes a municipality to enter into automatic aid agreements with other municipalities to provide and or receive fire protection services. And whereas the manager of emergency services / fire chief for both Central Frontenac and North Frontenac, along with the chief administrative officers, met to discuss automatic aid agreements. And whereas the automatic aid program is to provide vital fire protection services, which will ultimately improve the level of public safety for the residents. And whereas Central Frontenac will continue to provide ice water rescue for North Frontenac's wards 1, 2, and 3, as well as structure fires in Adams 202 and 203 as defined in the map. Now, therefore, it be it resolved that council consider passing a bylaw later in the meeting to authorize the mayor and the CAO clerk to execute the automatic aid agreement attached to this report for the provisions of ice water rescue and fire suppression services for the township of North Frontenac. Questions or comments? Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to say that this is great. I was happy to see some of the information in there, and I would just ask that going forward that we kind of keep tabs on how many calls we are responding to. I think it's great if we all work together and it's a reciprocal agreement. But if it becomes very one-sided, then that's my concern. So just like to keep an eye on how many times we have to respond.
Okay, Duncan?
I kind of have a 3-part question. So the first one are, what are the benefits in this agreement for Central Frontenac residents? The second is kind of a point, but $5,000 for a standby fee seems very low for the dollar amount that the North Frontenac Fire Department is getting. So we have millions of dollars of fire trucks on standby, and $5,000 seems fairly low for that. And then the third point, and you brought it up during the last motion, was just, do we have the resources in Central Frontenac to spare to help North Frontenac with their fires?
Go ahead, Chris.
All right, thank you. So in the agreement, we charge the MTO rate for our vehicles, just the same as we would do for an MBC. So all our equipment is we charge for that when we respond. The $5,000 standby fee is to cover our costs if we're canceled en route. So that $5,000 fee is pretty much the standard. 5,000 to 8,000 is a standard fee that the municipalities will ask for standby. So that's just to cover ourselves if we're turned around and sent back to our station before we get to the incident. So our cost is covered. Yes, our resources are tight for sure, but North reached out to us. They have, as you know, some concerns in one of their stations, and it was an agreement with the mayors and the CAOs and the fire chiefs that we would work together to try and look after the residents in the North. Not all of North, obviously.
So the first part of the question was, what are the benefits in this agreement to the taxpayers of Central Frontenac?
It's a working relationship, as Councillor Smith pointed out. I think it's good that we work together to try and keep the community safe. I don't think it's going to harm our municipality by doing this, and as I said, our cost is covered on this.
And they will come to us if we need help as well.
For sure.
It's mutual.
Mutual aid.
We could have a time when we don't have a lot of people in the daytime, that they may have people that can come and help us.
Sorry, that's a mutual aid agreement. This
Yes.
is an automatic aid agreement.
We're dispatched, yeah.
Okay, so they don't come if we need help?
Oh, yeah, they will.
Okay, so
They-
it works both ways.
Only if we request them.
Yeah.
No, we don't request, it comes.
So the
Chris,
difference. Yes.
Yeah, Chris, and I think that, yes, because it's not with the automatic aid, it's that we get dispatched right away, and so would North, is that correct? That's the difference between mutual?
So yeah, mutual aid is when they were called, once the home crew arrives on scene and they need assistance, they will call for assistance from an outside municipality. Automatic aid is an agreement that we would automatically run that call. So to assist, that's the difference.
Yes.
So
So
they're still available to us if we need them.
Okay,
And we're gonna do the same.
so it is,
So
it
in this
does work both ways.
In this agreement, North Frontenac does not automatically respond to Central Frontenac. We only automatically respond to North Frontenac.
Will North be doing an agreement to help us too?
No, that's not the case. They don't have the resources. That's why the automatic aid agreement is in
They
place.
don't have the resources.
Okay, so we are doing this to help our neighbors because they're in not a great situation right now. And automatic aid has been around for a long time, neighbors helping neighbors.
Yes. So, and just to add to that, we're looking to talk to South Frontenac to help us in the south.
Okay, Susan and then Philip or Nikki,
Okay.
one of you. I saw a hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Chris, I note that in the agreement, you would not have to respond if you didn't have the resources.
That's correct.
So, right. Just want to
Okay.
clarify that for everyone.
Okay, Nikki.
Just to clarify, Chief, do we currently have a mutual aid agreement with North Frontenac, or has it expired as well?
So mutual aid agreements are sort of a lot looser in that case that, no, they're not up to date as they could be. It's more of a mutual agreement is more just, I need help coming, and they'll call for somebody to come, but it's not a formal agreement there, no.
Is that something that you'll be looking at, formalizing mutual aid agreements, or no?
Well, we will probably, but I mean, my first priority is the automatic aid agreements in the north and the south Frontenac as well. We're going to be talking to Tay as well to see about getting some coverage in that side in the northeast area. But he said the chief there mentioned to me that there might be a fee to that, so I'm debating on whether we're going to need to do that or not. We
Okay,
don't-
Philip, did you have another question? No,
And
Dan.
You feel this is short term, Chris, or once they get the recruits up, then that'll be play it by ear type thing?
That is our hope, is that this will be, we've got it for a year right now, just to see that hopefully they'll get some people in the station up in that area. So that's, we're looking at another year.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? Carried. All right. Next, we have Public Works. Is that
Yes.
it for fire? Thank you,
Yes.
Chris. All right, Public Works, Tyson is with us. First motion, moved by Lynn and seconded by Susan, that council received the Public Works Q&A report as prepared by the Public Works Manager dated June 27th, 2023 for information. Cindy and then Lynn.
So one of my questions was missed in the report. And my question was when the streets in Arden were going to be swept.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Kelsey, they'll be finished next week.
Go. Lynn. Okay. Okay. Everybody wants to get swept. Duncan.
Tyson, with the amount of conversations regarding parking in the village, do you think that a parking committee would be justified or beneficial to the Central Frontenac taxpayers?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor McGregor, I think staff can make those kind of decisions with bringing reports to council upon request.
I think one of the issues we have, and the businesses are not going to like me for saying this, but staff who are employed by the different businesses and organizations in the village all park on the street. And this parking lot behind the hall or beside the hall, I don't think gets utilized as well as it could. And we need more parking. We need people to park across from the municipal office, but walking up that hill is no treat. But staff, everybody seems to want to park right in front of where they work, which is great. But there's just not enough parking in our village to get the cars off the street during the day. Or evening, there's lots of places to park, but not during the day. So it's a dilemma. I don't know how we're going to fix it unless we can create some more parking somewhere.
Madam Mayor, I can create between 15 and 30 spots of parking on the east side of Matthew Street, perpendicular parking across from the Medical Center Road, on the Medical Center Road. It was presented in the Matthew Street project and taken away. And we actually have grant money remaining that would pay for the majority of that project. We've been trying to figure out a way to come back to council just because Matthew Street was so difficult to navigate. But if council thought it was a good idea, we could revisit that again to add parking on Medical Center Road, perpendicular parking. We own lots of land there. It could go all the way from the Matthew Street and it could tie right in with the parking lot at Belong Restaurant.
Certainly for summer, it's probably not great, but the other 10 months of the year would probably be a good fit. The other problem with parking is we can pass all the bylaws we want, but unless we can enforce them, which probably means hiring a part-time bylaw enforcement officer that will walk around and check, if it's a 2-limit hour parking or whatever, and start handing out tickets. I don't know that we're prepared to do that, but it's something that's coming down the pipe at some point as we grow and get busier. Is a bylaw enforcement officer that works for us instead of the agency that we call in when there is an issue. Again, bylaws are only as good as we can enforce them. You can pass all you want, but if you don't enforce them, then you might as well forget putting it on paper. My rant for the day. Tyson.
I agree. And I just wanted to make it really clear. Michael, our treasurer, could probably confirm more accurate numbers in the report if requested from council, but there is up to possibly somewhere in the ballpark of $500,000 that we would have to be given back to the government if we didn't create something as an extension of this Matthew Street project. And ever since before I started, there's been a need for parking in the village. That was part of the reason we applied for a $3.2 million grant. We need parking, got the money. Seems like a no-brainer to me, but it would have to be, Kathy and I have been strategizing on how to present this to the public. So we just have to, it's something to think about anyways.
Okay.
We'll get some-
Nikki?
How do we go about requesting Tyson to bring back a report then?
I think he's working on it. Bring back a report.
Well, yeah, that's what he said. He goes with council's approval, so.
Well, is there an appetite to have Tyson put time into figuring out how many parking spaces we have now, how many new ones we can create, and how do we get people to park in those spaces? Is the other part of the quandary.
The other thing is too, that with Tyson, speaking about this and how there was a parking study done. So I'll pull that stuff for you so we can take a look at it. So it might be helpful.
To Kathy, the parking study was taken into consideration. It was given to the engineer who designed the Matthew Street project or the Shrub Lake Village project originally in 2019 when the design was done for that. So I've got that and that's been taken into consideration. And it was an expensive study and it said we need parking everywhere.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So you are working on it. You will bring us back something.
Now that I know there's an appetite for council, there was a lot of hard work and studies and engineering put into items on the Matthew Street project that were in the plans and then removed. So I just didn't want to move forward without council authorizing that. It's a lot of time. So
Draw it up and we'll have a public meeting to talk about it.
I think that's an excellent idea.
We've learned our lesson.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the Q&A report for Tyson? Dan?
If we're looking at Cardinal Street, Tyson, should we not look at Robert Street also with the parking situation there as well? It's the same situation. You can't see pulling out of there either. And we talked about the sand along the guardrails a couple meetings ago, and Nikki mentioned it last time. And the weeding going around the guardrails too as well.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Meeks, the weed eating typically doesn't start until the students start, which is upcoming, just around the corner. We actually are a little behind on the guardrail, getting underneath the guardrails, but in lots of cases, the sand that needs to be taken out from underneath the guardrails actually takes care of the weeds when we do that as well. So we don't have to do the same job twice. But that all is typically every year happens around when the students start. We got lots of traffic control and lots of bodies to make sure it's done safely. So.
Good. Okay. Nikki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tyson, because you've heard about sweeping for the past 2 months, maybe next year is there a possibility that we could look at getting the sweepers in earlier in May, late April, early May?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Gowdy, we actually discussed different options today. So we're really lucky, as some of you councillors may know, we were really lucky for years and years to be grandfathering pricing from a really great company that came from up north to come down and sweep our streets. And this year, our first year without being able to utilize that contractor, it was a struggle to get contractors up here this far. So, and more expensive. Road supervisor brought an idea to the table today about possibly renting and operating a machine ourselves, which could actually be a financial savings as well. So definitely, if that doesn't become an option, what we're going to do is should have been done a long time ago. We just got so lucky with that pricing that he was grandfathering. We'll have to formalize a contract, and we'll include the sidewalks, and we'll have to put dates and liquidated damages if they don't show up.
Okay. All right. Dan?
On the paving, Tyson, the shoulders of the road, there's nothing discussed on that. Like if you drive down Crow Lake Road or the South End Arden Road, you can't pull off anywhere, and it seems to be just like a drop off right away. Like, is there any discussion on the shoulders at all on the paving when you're pricing it or anything like that? Like, just seems to drop right off right away.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Meeks, the painting or paving?
Bringing the shoulder up to this pavement, right? Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying, Dan?
Yeah, on the paving part of this, on the pricing, there's no shoulder at all, like on Crow Lake Road or the south end of Arden Road, the Tamworth Road. Like, there's no shoulder at all. Is there any discussion on that when the paving pricing comes in, or?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Meeks, all of our new projects that we've done, there's been we designed them for a 3-meter lane and a 0.75 meter surface treated shoulder. So in certain situations, it wouldn't look like there's a shoulder, but it's because we did wider surface treatment. For our old existing roads that are quite narrow and don't have a shoulder, it's not as simple as just adding gravel to bring up that shoulder. Now, we have done lots of gravel reclamation to bring it back up. We did it on 38. We've done major contracts on 38 for that. Crow Lake was not built properly and wide enough and only paved with one lift of asphalt. There was a couple engineering flaws with that in 2018 or whenever that was done. But anything that we're reconstructing from here on out includes as wide as shoulders as we can possibly get. We can't just add gravel because to add a proper gravel shoulder, you're talking a full road reconstruction. So if you're talking about something like Crow Lake Road, where some of it we don't even own the property, we'd be buying land and we'd be reconstructing meters out past the edge of pavement to get a solid enough base to create a solid enough shoulder with proper drainage and everything. That's not a false shoulder where you drive off and it feels like a shoulder and then it actually disappears underneath the weight of your vehicle. So anything that we are reconstructing, we're widening, but for existing roads, we're doing our best to reclaim the gravel.
Okay. Oh, Susan, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I apologize if this is not appropriate to bring up at this time, but we have had a resident express concern about her property on Matthew Street. And given that I now understand that there's money from the Matthew Street project, would that be available to restore that property?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Irwin. I met with the contractor who did the project today. And I actually met with him about getting pricing for the extension of the project. Because now we're talking about if we come to council with a report, we might be proposing that we do some asphalt at the beach parking lot as well. Anyways, when I met with that contractor, we observed that this exact same application of topsoil, seed, and the same methods of installation were performed on both sides of Matthew Street. So the North Frontenac Telephone Company yard and that residence yard. And it comes down to an issue. We're just like any village, we're gonna have to, it's not about reseeding or resodding, it's about the maintenance. So ever since the project, that resident has actually stopped maintaining. You can see where they cut the grass right down until the construction and let weeds grow up. So today the weeds are 1 foot tall and the grass is mowed nicely right to the edge of it. And if you look across the road at North Frontenac Telephone Company yard, it looks perfect. Like it was the exact same. It's because they cut the grass down to the curb like they always have. So if it actually comes down to a maintenance issue from the resident. So it's a kind of a gray area, like all villages. That's actually municipal property where we did the project, but typically the homeowner just maintains it and cuts the rest of their yard right down to the curb, which on brand new topsoil, it flails the grass around, and that's what really makes it take off. And they sometimes water it to help out. So we need to look at if the resident is going to continue to not maintain that, we're going to have to add it to our grounds maintenance contract to mow it, because it looks terrible. But reseeding or sodding, if nobody's maintaining it, it's not going to help. So I'm glad you brought that up to my attention, because I went there today and it was might be a bigger issue than just throwing some more seed down and watering it. I'm open to suggestions on that, because everywhere else in the village, the residents maintain right to, even if it's township property, they maintain right to the back of the curb or the sidewalk in most cases. So.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Oh, Dan, one more. Oh, there we go.
Is there any feedback, Tyson, on the tracks in Titchburn yet? Being so rough, you were going to check into that. And also, I want to thank Public Works for cleaning the trees up after last night's storm in Mountain Grove. They're on the job and they're in minutes to get the trees. Thanks.
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Meeks, yes, they did have a quick response, and I think specifically Willis and his crew for that. They were there quick, and that was a nasty tree, that big tree that came down. I did follow up right after. I thought I updated council. CP was very clear that that's the job they're doing. They came back and they identified that one pothole that they would fix, and they let on like they would fix that one pothole. I'm not sure if that was done or not. I don't think so, but they were very clear that that's the way the project's staying unless we wanted to pay for a full reconstruction again. So they were pretty clear on that. That's the way it's staying.
I think we need to put a slow down, rough track sign or something, because if you hit it fast, you're almost airborne. Philip, not that I drive fast. Philip.
Thanks. It wasn't CP that paid for it. We paid for it. And I thought we were going to write a letter with our displeasure to CP.
We did.
that. Yeah. Yes, we did, but they would, I haven't got a response.
But they've never responded.
No. But they did, and Tyson is correct. Tyson is correct that they were.
Very frustrating process because we watched it when we were there. We pay for it, they perform it, they choose their contractors, they choose their methods, and we weren't satisfied with their methods. There's no situations I've ever came across where you need to have 8-10 inches of asphalt. You always do a proper base gravel, and even on the 401, you only need brand new 401. You only need 4 inches of asphalt max. There's areas that have settled now since then. They had 8, 10, 12 inches of asphalt just because it was quicker for them to do it that way. And the grading of the approach is there was no engineering performed. There was no survey shots taken as far as anytime I was there. There was nothing. So very frustrating process watching that.
But the trains move nicely across there.
But I thought, Tyson, that even though CP said it was a good job and that's what they're sticking with, there was talk about writing a letter to the Ministry of Transportation and they were going to look at it. But there was no follow-up on that, or?
Yeah, transportation wouldn't have anything to do with it.
No, we talked about ministry or something there.
Councillor Meeks is right. I brought forward, if we wanted to pursue that, there is an agency, and I had it in that activity report, but now I'm drawing a blank on the name, but it's some kind of a Canadian transportation agency that does work with municipalities when they feel they've been wronged by the rail authority. So it's, I don't know the success rate of that, but as long as council wanted to authorize that, it's something we could look into.
Won't hurt to send them a note that we are not happy with the job and that CP won't do anything about it. Cindy.
Could we not write a letter to the ombudsman too on that?
I'm not sure. Last we left off, it was going to come from the mayor and CAO to write to, I believe we said CP.
We did that.
So I'm not, and I don't think we got a response. So
Other than the verbal response to you that that's all they're doing. Yeah.
Is a possibility to follow up again then?
I can
Maybe
do that.
and it's not, we're not happy and our residents aren't happy. So we need to do something on their behalf to
Certainly try it and see.
And the caution is they'll tell us to put another 100,000 in it and we can fix it. So keep that in the back of our minds because it obviously needs to be brought up. So we can negotiate, but we have to wait till next year's budget if we're going to actually do anything because they won't pay for it. We'll be paying for it. It's that simple.
Live with that job. It's worth writing a letter, I think, to try to get it fixed because it's no better than it was before.
We'll write a second letter and a third. Cindy.
Well, I think if we write a letter, at least then it shows that we were concerned. So if somebody has an accident at that spot, it shows that we were trying to do our due diligence to fix it, but we weren't getting any cooperation from the railway.
Yeah. Okay, let's pass this motion. All those in favor? Carried. See, Tyson, when you miss a meeting, you've got many more questions to catch up. All right, next is that all for roads?
No, there's the sand.
Okay, oh, right, here we go. Moved by Duncan and seconded by Susan. Whereas monies have been set aside in the 2023 budget to replace the damaged sections of the sand dome roof at the Hinchinbrook Garage, and whereas Public Works has secured a quote to procure a contractor to complete the work, and whereas the Public Works manager is recommending to use the non-competitive purchasing method from the procurement policy and enter into a contract with Barrett's Farm and Family Center. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council approve the recommendation of the Public Works manager and use the non-competitive purchasing method and enter into a contract with Barrett's Farm and Family Center to perform the necessary repairs to the existing tarp. And further, that the Public Works manager be authorized to issue a purchase order for $95,885.03 before HST, and that the mayor and the CAO clerk be authorized to sign the formal contract documents. Philip.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to know if Barrett's was the same people that replaced the end and provided the garage door when we did that a number of years ago.
I think it is.
I'm hearing, that was before my time, but I'm hearing that that's who fixed it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what I remember too. Okay. No other questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. There aren't too many people that do it. Not a cheap thing to get done, but replacing the tarp is a lot. Lynn.
Hi, thanks, Madam Mayor. I just wanted, before Tyson leaves, to send a big thank you out to him and his whole staff for getting the Arden Road signage changed for the speed limit. I've already started to notice a big difference.
Good. Good, good. Okay. Now we've got Cindy here with some things about land exchange. Moved by Susan and seconded by Duncan. Whereas council passed resolution 53/2021 at its March 23rd, 2021 council meeting to declare lands surplus for the purpose of transferring property to the owners of 1002 Schoolhouse Road to correct title due to a dwelling partially constructed within township property. And whereas the council agreed the consideration for this transfer could be satisfied by way of an exchange of land along the road frontage to incorporate road widenings and a requirement to fence the boundary along the K&P Trail. And whereas notice of the intent to dispose of property has been given pursuant to our sale of land policy, and the reference plan has now been completed and the parties wish to complete the transaction. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council receive this report prepared by the deputy clerk for information and consider passing the bylaw to authorize the transaction later in the meeting. Discussion. This is in Clarendon, right?
Yes, Madam Mayor, it's off of Schoolhouse Road, and I did want to just bring to council's attention that there is an error in the draft R plan that was included in the report. It is corrected in the final version that's being deposited. It says Highway 509, but it's Schoolhouse Road.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Right. And moved by Susan and seconded by Lynn. Whereas council passed resolution 282/2023 at its June 13th, 2023 council meeting to reconsider the naming of Whiskey Street to Ethel Street. And whereas staff have identified a number of private roads which have been named by council through resolution since 2012, but not added into our road naming bylaw. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council receive this report prepared by the deputy clerk for information and consider passing an amending bylaw later in the meeting to add these roads into the road naming bylaw. So this will pick up the other names that were missed as well as this one. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, now this one we have to fill in some blanks, folks. Moved by Susan and seconded by Lynn. Whereas council passed resolution 463/2023 at its November 15th, 2022 council meeting to appoint councillors to its committees. And whereas former councillor Craig Middleton was appointed to several committees, and these appointments need to be reassigned due to his resignation as councillor. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council receive this report and acknowledge the changes to the appointments as follows. And the first one is the Eastern Ontario Trails Alliance. Duncan?
So I just want to start by saying, Councillor Middleton was on both the Trails Alliance and the Trails Revitalization Committee. I've kind of been negative towards some of the trails in the past, and I don't think I'd be a good candidate for either one of those committees right off the hop.
Well, and Nikki sits on the Trails Committee, and Nikki, would you be able to take the EOTA appointment? Okay. So we'll put Nikki there.
Can I?
Yes.
Also to, Councillor Everett had mentioned that, because we have so many on CPAC, if you're interested in going on to CPAC, he doesn't mind, going off of CPAC to allow. So that's what he mentioned to me as well.
I had asked him. Not said.
Yeah, you mentioned it to me yesterday.
Okay, so I'm going to add to this motion that we're going to put Duncan in on CPAC.
And remove Bill.
Okay. And remove Bill. We might as well do it all in the one motion.
Sure.
All right. All right, District 3 Rec Committee. Duncan, are you okay with that one? All right. It's MC, right? Okay. Sherbet Lake Farmers Market, Susan is on. Heritage Festival Committee. They don't meet a lot. They meet closer to the Heritage Festival time. Okay, all right. Okay. Well, and again, it's hard because some of these committees meet during the day. Some will meet in the evenings. It's different times. Central Frontenac Washroom Facilities Committee. Again, that's a group that's putting together. Okay, Duncan. Okay. And Central Frontenac Trails Revitalization Committee. Which one is that? Is that?
You're already on that too.
Oh, because Craig was on that. Yes. Right. That's right.
That's why I said you wouldn't need that many council members. That's why I think that.
So how be if I just stick my name in there and continue on along with Nikki? Nikki's already on there
Yeah.
because I go anyway. I tend to be the liaison with
Instead of having two council members.
EOTA too.
Just one, I think you have two. Anyway, you have two.
Yes. Okay. All right. So it's Nikki and Fran. Okay, so here's what we've put in. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council receive this report and acknowledge the changes to the appointments as follows. Eastern Ontario Trails Alliance, Nikki Gowdy. District 3 Rec Committee, Duncan McGregor. Sherbet Lake Farmers Market Committee, Susan Irwin. Heritage Festival, Cindy Kelsey. Central Frontenac Washroom Facilities Committee, Duncan McGregor. Central Frontenac Trails Revitalization, Nikki and Fran. CPAC, Duncan McGregor, and remove Bill Everett. And that council asked staff to solicit interest for an additional public member to sit on CPAC. We don't need that because we've already
Yeah,
done
we do.
that.
We do need.
Oh,
it's a
additional?
public- It's a public.
Okay,
it's a
sorry.
Public appointment.
All right,
We
forget
have
that.
some members of the public.
Okay, and that council asked staff to solicit interest for an additional public member to sit on the CPAC committee. And further, that council acknowledged the dissolution of the Human Resources Advisory Committee. Okay, that's a lot in one motion, but it's done. Yes, Lynn.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I just had a question about why we're dissolving the Human Resources Committee. It hadn't been discussed.
Oh, sorry.
The lawyers.
You go ahead, Kathy, with the legalese.
That was it. That was in regards to comments in regards to what the lawyers had given us during closed session. Okay, and that's why, because I said we're not following the procedural bylaw. We're not, and because he said the fact that we're doing a lot of it's human resource issues, that if you open a meeting, you have to do exactly the same as we do council. So you have to have motions to open, you have to have it publicized, as well as, and you're going to be in closed session more than you are going to be in open. So they didn't advise that we even continue with that at this point, that I bring everything forth anyway to council. So, okay.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor of these appointments? Carried.
Right.
Just Madam Mayor, with what Kathy just said, so all these other committees, they should be have public notice of their meetings as well.
Yes.
So
and-
we're not doing that today.
Well, they are advertised on our website. If you go to committee meetings, it's there, right, Cindy? Help me out with this.
Yeah, we're making every attempt where we know about the committees and when we're organizing them that they get put on. That Chris is doing a really great job putting them up on the website council calendar. And we include the agenda as soon as they're available on that platform as well.
So the public can attend, but they are not video.
They're not
videoed or put on YouTube, but public is welcome to attend. They just can't take part in the discussions. Okay.
And that's exactly what the county does. The county has it on council calendar when the meetings are, and they do put up an agenda. So going forward, we will be doing the exact same as Frontenac.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Next. Extension of Frontenac Municipal Law Enforcement. Moved by Susan, seconded by Lynn. Whereas the township currently contracts out its bylaw enforcement services to Frontenac Municipal Law Enforcement Incorporated, and whereas said contract was for a period of 5 years expiring July 10th, 2023. Now therefore be it resolved that council authorizes the AO clerk to enter into a 1-year extension of the existing contract with Frontenac Municipal Bylaw Enforcement, Inc. for the provisions of bylaw enforcement services. Discussion. Susan.
Given your comments, Madam Mayor, considering hiring a bylaw enforcement officer, I'm just wondering, in the 1-year contract, if there will be a termination provision where we can terminate it early on, 2 weeks notice or 1 month's notice.
Kathy, what does the contract say?
I don't have it in front of me, I don't think, do I? In this packet, maybe? Right.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Irwin, the extension does not address that. It's just clearly just a 1-year extension. I'd have to go back to the original agreement. There is termination provisions in there. Frankly, I'm doubtful that we would be in a position within the year to probably be in a position to terminate, but that is a good point. And let me see here. Confidentiality term.
They do a good job, but they're not available to do things like parking Saturday afternoons. It's hard to get them to come out unless it's something drastic, or Sundays, where if we had our own bylaw enforcement officer, those could be the days of the week that they work in the summer. And, but again, it's another position, it's more money and
through you, paragraph 2 of the original agreement allows termination by either party on 30 days written notice. So.
Okay, so 30 days. Okay. All right, Nikki.
Thank you. And following Councillor Irwin's comments as well, to your previous comments, that's the biggest downfall we have in this township is we have bylaws and nothing is enforced. And I think going forward, we need to look at either hiring or doing a better job of enforcing it, because it is lost revenue. And once you start enforcing the rules out there, you'll see, for example, less trailers just popping up and them putting a skirt on and them living there. Whereas our bylaw said you're only allowed to have a trailer on a piece of property with the intent for short term while you build or create other housing. So just using that as an example, example of bylaws where we're dropping the ball and not enforcing it. I think we need to direct staff to look at a way to start enforcing our rules and policies, and maybe we'll have better ownership of things in the township.
Now, Chris does enforce our bylaws right now. When a complaint comes in, Chris does deal with it. But it's not something that he's got a ton of time to do either. Cindy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. One thing that staff have been talking a lot about and hoping to move towards is a system of the administrative monetary penalties to replace some of the fines and penalties that are in our existing bylaws, because they're a lot easier to enforce and a lot cheaper to enforce because we don't have to go through the courts. There's a bit of a process to set that up. South Frontenac has successfully done so, and they're more than happy to help us. And it will take some resources and time. The only problem with that, unfortunately, is we can't use AMPs for zoning bylaw compliance. So the example about trailers and stuff would not be able to be dealt with through AMPs, but we certainly could. And that's one thing that licensing for trailers is something that we also need to consider, because it is hard to regulate the trailers through the zoning bylaw.
And I believe the county has also gone into that process instead of going through the courts. So it is definitely something that goes hand in hand with a bylaw enforcement officer, because otherwise we spend more money in lawyers in a courtroom than we get back from the fines that we're levying for whatever the infraction was. So definitely that's the first step, I think, of moving it forward. Good discussion. Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Carried. All right, moved by Susan and seconded by Lynn. Whereas the draft procedural bylaw has been brought to council over the past few months for review, and whereas a special meeting was held on April the 26th to review the changes in further detail, and whereas staff have made the necessary changes as outlined by council and are now presenting the final procedural bylaw. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council consider passing the bylaw to enact the procedural bylaw as presented later in the meeting. Philip.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was under the understanding that we were going to get a report in regards to the land acknowledgement prior to us passing this bylaw.
They're still working on it.
Okay, yes, we're still working. Actually, today, when I was in with the other Frontenac clerks, when we were doing the interviews for the Integrity Commissioner, we did talk about the Truth and Reconciliation and that whole piece about the land acknowledgement. We're trying to finalize some things because I think there's sort of discrepancies as to how much we put in this land acknowledgement. And of course, it came from the government, and it came from the government in the first place after they did the 94. So I will do a report. So you'll have part of a report as to what the province and what the government required us to do. And this is where this is all coming from.
Put your mic on.
I can't. I asked that question before at a council meeting, and I was told that there was no governing body that said we must do a land acknowledgement.
It doesn't say it's in regards to, I will give you the report from the other, and I know Cindy was in on with some of the clerks and stuff as meetings as well about the land acknowledgement. It doesn't say about land, they're talking about truth and reconciliation and making some, but land acknowledgement is part and parcel. But I think there's been some discussions back and forth, and it's to get something that we need. And I know South Frontenac said today, what they're proposing to do, I think, is send letters out to their Indigenous communities. They've got 4 different groups that they're going to find out some stuff. So there's more to come. It's just that trying to get everybody together on what we're doing, but I have quite a file on.
And we're ahead of the game because as mayor, I chose to do the land acknowledgement, and that came from Chief Doreen Davis. We have a very active Indigenous group here.
But you haven't been following the procedural bylaw, and no one's called you out on it.
There you go. Let's change the bylaw.
But I've asked every time we've looked at this about this report, and we've not.
Would you like me to stop doing it until we change the bylaw?
I would.
Is it in the new procedural bylaw?
It is.
There we go. Let's pass that bylaw so we can do it legally.
but I've been promised a report before we.
Yeah, and that's what I said, but I did say the report was coming, but I'm not the only one working on it. I mean, we're doing collectively of all the. So.
I'm not criticizing that it's not been done. I'm just saying, I've been told we're gonna get a report before we pass this bylaw, and now you're asking us to pass the bylaw and we don't have the report.
Okay, Cindy.
Well, we could keep it in the bylaw. I would suggest we keep it in the bylaw and just agree maybe not to do the land acknowledgement until the report comes forward. I know the county initially had drafted a report and had hoped to have it circulated by the June 27th meeting. However, there's been a lot going on with the various clerks and the integrity commissioner RFPs and whatnot. So maybe that's the solution, is to just leave it in the bylaw for now, but not do the acknowledgement until the report comes forward, perhaps.
What was that, Philip? The procedural bylaw, just that we've been working on it for about 6 months now. Nikki?
Just further to a comment you made, Madam Mayor, I'm glad that you spoke to Chief Doreen, but did you also speak to the Algonquin chief as well? Because we have equal parts of both here. So to not be in a precarious situation, we need to acknowledge both the Algonquins and the Shabbats.
Well, we don't recognize the Shabbats. We are recognizing the territory of the Algonquin Nation. So that covers both.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's worded the way it is, to be inclusive. But if you'd rather I stop doing it, I can do that. But yeah, it's up to you. Would you like the land acknowledgement to be stopped? Raise your hands. How many would like me to stop doing it? Those who would let us go ahead and do this. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do this. Good. All right. So do we want to pass this procedural bylaw tonight? Or do you want to defer it?
That's up to council.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, defeated. So no procedural bylaw, but we are going to be saying the land acknowledgement because we agreed to that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's move on to community policing. Moved by Susan and seconded by Lynn, that council received the minutes from the Community Policing Advisory Committee meeting held January 30th, 2023 for information. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Nikki and seconded by Philip, that council received the minutes from the District 4 Recreation Committee meeting held May 17th, 2023 for information. Any comments? All those in favor? Carried. Right, moved by Philip, seconded by Nikki, that council received the minutes from the District 3 Recreation Committee meetings held on March 12th, 2023, April 2nd, 2023, and May 7th, 2023 for information. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Nikki, seconded by Philip, that council received the minutes from the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority meeting on April 17th, 2023 for information. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Great. Moved by Nikki and seconded by Philip, that council received the following correspondence for information, and it's 1 to 7 in our package. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we are at the bylaws. Communications, no public meetings. We're at bylaws. Moved by Philip, seconded by Nikki, that bylaw 2023-35, being a bylaw to declare lands legally described as part of lot 30 concession 4 OSO surplus for the purpose of disposing part of the former K&P Railway in exchange for the road widening parcels be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 27th day of June 2023. All those in favor? Carried. All right. Moved by Nikki, seconded by Philip. That bylaw 2023-36, being a bylaw to amend Schedule A of bylaw number 2002-125 as amended for the naming and or renaming of public highways and private lanes, and to amend bylaw 2005-197, being a bylaw to establish and assume a public highway Ethel Oak Bluffs be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 27th day of June 2023. All those in favor? Carried. All right. Moved by Danny and seconded by Nikki, that bylaw 2023-37, being a bylaw to repeal bylaw number 2017-42.
Madam Mayor,
Oh, that's.
we defeated
sorry.
that motion.
We did. I don't need that one. Take that one away. Thank you, Nikki. All right, moved by Nikki and seconded by Philip. That bylaw 2023-38, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an automatic aid agreement between the Corporation of the Township of Central Frontenac and the Corporation of the Township of North Frontenac, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 27th day of June 2023. All those in favor? Carried. Right. Retirement, all right. Moved by Philip, seconded by Nikki. That bylaw 2023-39, being a bylaw to adopt an asset retirement obligations policy, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 27th day of June 2023. All those in favor? Carried. Okay.
Notice of motions.
Now we do notice of motions.
Mhm.
So notice of motion is sale of the Hinchinbrook School. I have a motion moved by Nikki and seconded by Philip that the Council of Central Frontenac put on hold the sale of the old Hinchinbrook School property located on Long Lake Road until the council completes our strategic planning exercise and set our priorities for the next 3.5 years. I believe that there is an appetite for the development of that site as an addition to our township. Discussion. There is a report. Susan?
Cindy's provided some information.
So I'm just wondering if there could be some more greater clarity as to the benefit of retaining the school and the cost to the township for retaining the school, given that we had talked about selling it.
The cost Michael could help us with. I know there's insurance costs and we've had vandalism that we've had to deal with.
Madam Mayor, I would need a little bit of time to look into that. I was just opening up the budgeting software there to see, but I don't have an exact cost on the building right now.
Do you have an approximate?
For the insurance?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say $1,000. It's
Okay.
more the vandalism and the deterioration of the building that is a bigger concern to me than the $1,000 we spent on insurance.
Okay. Susan?
And oh, yes, thank you, Cindy. The asset retirement obligation. So as I said earlier, in a building with asbestos in it, very likely asbestos in that building. And what are the costs to remediate that? We'd have examples from the Charlotte Lake School, but I'd have to talk to Andy on that.
Okay. Susan, follow up.
Just to follow up in terms of the benefit, because during the the election campaign for council, one of the complaints that I repeatedly heard was that why did the township buy Hinchinbrook? Why did the township buy the Sharpet Lake school site? What are they spending all that money for? So I just need to understand the benefit, if there really is this appetite, since it wasn't what I heard. I'm not saying it's not out there, I just haven't heard it.
Okay, Nikki?
If we would, I was a big proponent of selling the schools for years and years and years. If we would have sold them when it was first initiated by Councillor Burke, we would have made money, and that now we're not going to make money. The price of land's not going back up at all. We have a soccer association that's now renting space from the school board to have soccer league. So that property is perfect for putting a couple of soccer fields in. Ideas have been brought up about a community garden. On the housing front, the city of Kingston is willing to invest money in our area if we bring in a developer to it. So housing has been brought up numerous times during the communal service discussions, and that being the property that it is, it could be tied into, if we could find a developer for communal services and putting housing in. I just think that we missed the boat, and now we need to look at what we could put in there to be a benefit for the township. So we spent just over 100,000 to tear down Sharpet Lake Public School, and it's sitting there, the lot's still sitting there empty. So if we invest 100,000 and we bring recreation in and more services, possibly housing, it's something to look at, because we just did the strategic plan with Frontenac County, and housing was a big push for the area. So that's where it's all coming from. We're not going to make money off of it right now. We'll be lucky to get money back for it. So before we sell it and break even, what's another few months? We've been waiting almost 4 years now to get it on the market. So what's another couple of months to delay putting it on the market if we're going to sell and investigate what the people want? Because part of strategic planning is reaching out and getting the opinions of the public in our area to what they want to do with it. That's where my whole idea was coming from. Does that answer anything?
Okay. Susan?
Thank you, Councillor Nikki. That does indeed. I just have a question for Cindy, I think. When we talked about, when we looked at the matrix and so forth, and your research indicates that you were working on the proposal, the request for proposals, and that you have been keeping a list of people who were interested if the proposal was coming forward. So just wondered if we could have an idea of how many people have or organizations have expressed interest, and what sorts of projects they might be interested in, if that's available.
I don't think we can discuss details of projects other than in general. Otherwise,
you're very general.
Yes. So in general.
Yeah. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Irwin. Yes, there's been at least 4 individuals who've contacted me, and they're a range from commercial use, housing uses, and a mix of both. So there's some interesting ideas out there for sure. And the matrix, I think, provides some flexibility to allow us to accept or not accept any of those offers if we did go that route. So if we didn't see anything that wasn't going to, get a return on investment or that kind of thing, then the council would definitely have the option to not proceed. Sorry.
Okay. Duncan, did you have a question? No. Okay. Okay.
I do have a question though. So just so I understand the full picture here, because I was not involved in the purchase of the school. It looks like we purchased school for $110,000 based on Sharpet Lake Public School. In order for us to keep the property, it's going to cost us approximately another $100,000 to get the property back to a level, flat piece of ground. Is that a correct statement?
It's possible, although if we can sell the property as is and somebody can go in and use the building that's there as a shell and build do renovations, who knows?
But that's right. My question was, so to get back to a flat piece of ground
It's,
was
yeah,
approximately $100,000.
well, or more now with the
Yeah, or-
cost of fuel. Yeah,
I'm just having Michael double check because I recall the demolition costs on the Charlotte Lake site maybe were higher than 100 grand, but I might be wrong. on
I
that.
think they were closer to 140, 150.
60, I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The proposals that I think we would be looking at would not, well, I don't know for sure, but I think the intention would, for most, would be to leave the structure there and remediate it. There might be some who wish to demolish. I'm not sure.
From what I've been told, there is some asbestos, but it's not a huge amount. But what they found at the Charlotte Lake Public School was the paint. Everything is enamel, which has asbestos in it. And even though they thought it wasn't a lot, it turned out to be a lot, and that's what pushes the cost up. So, but this, so what you're saying here is leave it as it is till the strategic plan is done, and then see what comes out of that. The developers or the people who are interested now will probably still be interested 2 or 3 months down the road. And we'll have a better idea what people think about where we should be going with it. If we could put some rent geared income housing there, it would be fantastic, because we know that we need all sorts of housing. We especially need housing for single people. And older people and younger people. Cindy.
And I think I mentioned it in the report as well. If that's the direction that council wants to go, I think looking at I think it's a section 110 agreement would be wise if you think that council is going to want to benefit a developer or provide any sort of rebates with respect to promoting an affordable housing or some kind of a housing benefit, just so that we're in a position that, if we needed to rebate or not charge market rates for interest rates, or if we needed to bonus a company in any way to make the development work, then we have those bylaws in place.
Okay. Philip and then Dan.
I think that speaks to the entire motion of let's wait to the strategic plan and understand what the community is looking for or potentially wants. Then we have a better idea of what direction to go.
Okay, Dan?
I was just gonna say, when I talked to Michael, it was only like $1,000 a year for the school for grass cutting and stuff like that. So it's not a huge amount that we're actually putting out to keep the school for now. There's good wells on it and septic system, and as well, we use it for backup parking. And the fire department actually trains at that location time to time. And once that is sold and gone, and it's gone, we can't get it back, and it's in a good location too as well.
We also talked about severing off a piece of that property, but then if an owner comes along, who knows how much property they'll want. And anyhow, okay, so the motion before us is to delay this. All those in favor? Carried. So you'll have to do whatever your asset depreciation is, Michael. I just said you'll have to do your asset depreciation on that one.
Well, the Hinchbrook School was not included in the building condition report assessments that we did. So yes, we'll have to do a whole report on that. And I don't know what the exact cost would be on one building. So.
Okay.
Say Louis.
All right. Okay, next we have moved by Philip and seconded by Nikki, that staff prepared the breakdown and costing of having an in-house planner for the township rather than subcontracting the planning services out to the county. We currently have a backlog in the planning department, and only having planning staff on site one day of the week is not helping to alleviate this issue. I would like to see the difference in costs between the two options and for it to be considered before we start the budget process in October for 2024. Nikki?
With your permission, I would like to defer this motion till after the closed session discussion tonight, please and thank you.
Okay, do you have a seconder to defer? Seconded by Cindy. Okay, Nikki, Cindy, to defer. All those in favor of deferring? Carried. I don't know if I'm doing this right. I'm sticking it at the bottom,
Because the dripper is over here, but that's all right.
but that's different movers and seconders, right? All right. Now, we have a very blank motion here that is long-term parking in public parking lots, new or other business. Isn't that one we
Susan.
already, oh,
No,
sorry, go
no,
ahead,
separate
Susan.
I'm not sure I'd actually thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure I characterize it as parking so much as camping. There have
Oh,
been
yes.
concerns expressed about owners of RVs camping overnight stays at the government docks with people either because they're holding their tanks are full or whatever, urinating and even defecating on the trail. So I wanted this on new business just so that we could make the council aware. And we've been talking about bylaw enforcement and parking and all of that. So I understand that there is a no camping sign there. I saw the trailers. There were 2 trailers on the weekends.
It's tucked against the trees. It's not,
Maybe
It
it
could be
needs to
bigger.
be more visible.
yeah.
At least.
Well, I think whippersnipping, but probably some shears to cut its branches of trees are around it.
And is it part of a bylaw that there can be no camping?
The bylaw that we enforce. I don't think there's a bylaw that says
there's not.
you can't camp. Goes right along with the non-existing parking bylaw.
So we can't enforce something that doesn't exist.
Well, we can tell people though that it's a public place and that camping is not allowed. We just can't quote a bylaw number. Cindy?
Oh, thank you. Just a suggestion, because I think something got added into a motion earlier in the meeting about working on a parking bylaw. I think that was related to the math or the Cardinal Cafe.
Yes.
So, I mean, we can certainly incorporate overnight parking in that bylaw, I would think, without any issue. I know in the past, and I don't know if it was last summer or 2 summers ago, there was also concerns raised at some of the boat launches, I believe, because I think there had been some, I don't know if it was boat trailers that were being left there overnight. So I think that has been an ongoing issue too, that we could probably address in that bylaw. But again, it comes down to the enforcement piece, but that's something that AMPS definitely would be able to cover. And if we have that system in place, it's a lot easier to levy fines or penalties, not fines, and recover those costs.
In the interim, though, I believe we do have signs at our launch sites that says no camping. Okay.
No, there's no. That's not.
Okay, so maybe we need to, on this motion, Duncan?
So just to go back to the point I made to Tyson earlier, because of how much of council's time is involved with parking as a whole, I really do think we should look into some kind of parking committee to deal with these issues throughout the entire township proactively, instead of it coming to council every single meeting about a parking issue in a different location.
But a committee we typically don't appoint committees to do staff work. They are the ones that really need to look at all of the districts and not just one. It's a fine line between committees becoming the operations people. So we have staff that can do it. So we should at least get them to give us a report. Then if we think they've missed something, we can certainly let them know what we think they've missed. Cindy?
Madam Mayor, this might be a good use of some public engagement through Engage Frontenac too, to gain people's ideas and thoughts about what are issues and where are the issues, and just that would give the public a heads up about what we're proposing to look at as well, maybe.
Yeah. So do we need this motion to say something about staff doing a report about checking out launch sites for camping? I've kind of changed the name to be long-term camping in public spaces.
Madam Mayor, I think there was a suggestion that we could amend the with the other one, that we also need to perhaps clarify the signage or make sure that the signage is more prominent.
So that staff include this issue, which is long-term camping in public spaces, in the parking bylaw.
And ensure prominent signage prohibiting camping.
Prominent no camping signs.
Yes.
Are erected
Yes.
at boat launches. Okay. So what the motion says, moved by Nikki, seconded by Dan, that staff include this issue in the parking bylaw and ensure prominent no camping signs are erected at boat launches. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. I wonder if there's a retired police officer that would want a part-time bylaw enforcement officer job.
Also, the next week you put on a garbage pickup at the caboose.
Oh, yes. So Nikki, this one's yours, the garbage pickup at the caboose. We stuck that under new business.
Yes, we'll have to have a vote to see if we can get 2/3 that would agree to come back and
Yes.
open the discussion.
Okay, so we need to have 2/3, 2/3 is 6, right? So we need 6 people to vote in favor of bringing this issue back to the table. And it's picking up garbage at the caboose for the rest of the season. All those in favor of bringing that issue back? Okay, the issue is back. So what do you want the motion to say? I'm going to use the back side of this.
No, I've got other blank motions here. You could put in.
So the issue is cost and what we would have to change our garbage pickup contract with whoever's doing the pickup.
What would the cost be if they're stopping right there at the township office and at the public works office? What more would it be to pick up a bag of garbage?
I don't
Like you're
know.
not
I don't
adding
know how they
mileage, you're
bill.
not-
Not in the, it's whatever's in the contract. They do it per site, so I'm not sure what the.
So what if we asked the caboose people to take the bag out and walk it across the street on the days it's due? We're not going to charge them, so they're getting the service for free. We're asking them just to take the bag out and walk it across the street for pickup at one of the buildings.
So walk it over to the township office.
Yep.
That's a simple solution without a resolution.
Without a resolution.
But how much garbage are we talking, I think is the question. Now Caboose Day, when they have their opening, that's going to be probably a fair amount of garbage, although, yeah, there's food there. They have food and drinks. And so that might be the heaviest part of the.
But again, they're
pickups.
bringing people into the township that day that might go to the Cardinal and get a donut, or they want to drink, get in the car and are cruising around and, oh, I want to drink before I head home. Or they stop at Mike Dean's. Oh, there's a grocery store. I'll grab the loaf of bread or the bag of milk that I need. So do we penalize them for having a community event because they're going to have more garbage just that one day a year than we are for the bag a week?
It's up to you folks. We can take everybody's garbage and do what we can with it, but remember, you'll be talking about this with every event that comes up. If it's at the beach, the garbage is already there, right? I don't care. What do you want to do? Who wants to move it? Dan?
To have them just bring it across or whatever.
Well, I don't think you should do that. That's really not appropriate. I think you have to have the garbage picked up there. Because otherwise.
Can we do a motion to investigate the cost of picking up the
You and I
garbage
have-
there?
we can do whatever we want.
If I was the person picking up the garbage and I knew that the neighbor across the way was bringing it to your
They wouldn't be happy.
property, I wouldn't be happy. Lynn,
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So if we were to do that, are we opening ourselves up for other people wanting to do the same kind of thing and just bringing their garbage over and dropping it off at at the township office.
Yeah, I'm saying that's not appropriate to do. If we're going to pick up the garbage, it needs to be picked up at the caboose as a separate pickup spot.
Just for the caboose day until we know more.
But what other people use municipal land for a tourist attraction in our township? Like that's what we're talking about. They are promoting a tourist attraction on our land, on township owned land. So who else in the township will be coming knocking on the door that has a tourist attraction in the township on municipal land? We already pick up the garbage at every facility site. So the ball diamonds and the halls that. So what other, I'm lost. What other?
Yeah, I can't think of any at the moment, but if there are, they can ask as well. And then we'll have to decide whether or not we've opened a can of worms or not. Okay. Moved by Nikki and seconded by Philip that staff investigate cost for garbage pickup at the Caboose Park across from municipal office in Charlotte Lake and bring back a report for the next council meeting. There you go. See what the cost is. Okay, all those in favor? Carry. All right. Okay, I think we need to have a bit of a recess after we go. Whoa, not yet. We're going to read the motion to go into closed. And then, then we can have our 5-minute break, okay?
Yeah.
So moved by Dan and seconded by Nikki that council move into closed session pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act to discuss A, proposed or pending acquisition of or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, section 239(2)(c). B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, reorganization plan 239(2)(b). C, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, section 239(1)(e). All those in favor? Carried. Okay, let's have a 8-minute recess and then we'll come back to closed.